Welcome to this session, where we will be looking at HelmutFX, what it does and how you can navigate through the different modules and screens. HelmutFX consists of 4 different modules. Helmut comes with a web-based user interface. It requires a client to be installed on the client computer, so the web page can communicate with the HelmutFX server. This is how you start the client. At startup, it shows it is not connected. It will show you the client version, and it also allows you to open the client logs for troubleshooting. To connect to the HelmutFX server, you will need to know its IP address, or a URL, and enter this in the address bar of your browser. We advise you to use Google Chrome for best compatibility. HelmutFX supports secure connections, using HTTPS, if configured to do so. HelmutFX consists of 4 different modules. FX, which is the module that handles projects, templates, users, groups and all other project-related settings. IO offers render management. It will allow you to export sequences from Adobe Premiere and After Effects. It also offers the possibility to set up render clients, separate servers that can be used to offload the rendering process from your local machine. Helmut.io is also responsible for importing assets, creating proxies, observing watch folders, everything that has to do with import and export. CO, or Cosmo, is sometimes called the interplay for Adobe. Through Cosmo you can access and manipulate the contents of Adobe projects, such as assets, sequences, metadata, and folder structures. Cosmo contains a database, to assure HelmutFX is aware of assets being used in projects etc. HK, also known as Housekeeper, uses the information from Cosmo to clean up projects. It will allow you to archive and restore Adobe projects. HK can interact with IO to execute the copy and move operations needed for this. At the login screen, you can choose the module you would like to log into, either by clicking the appropriate icon, or by selecting it using the drop-down menu. If you have the appropriate permissions, you can switch between these modules once you logged in. You can now log in with your username and password, and if desired, select the Remember Me, so your username and password will be stored. You can use your display name, as well as your username to log into Helmut. If the system is configured to use Active Directory and allows single sign-on, you will not need to log into Helmut separately. When you log in, your web browser will connect you to the server, by using the HelmutFX client on your computer. Should there be any workflows configured, these may already start upon logging into the system. If the HelmutFX client is not running, you will see the message trying to connect to local Helmut client, and an option to continue in restricted mode. This mode will be explained in a different video. As we logged into the FX module, we will now see our projects in the Projects section. Let us look at the different, general options inside the HelmutFX interface. You can change modules by hovering over the Helmut logo in the top left. This will allow you to select the desired module. Right below this Helmut logo, you can see your display name, and a drop-down menu option. You will see a logout button, which will log you out of HelmutFX, and further down on the left-hand side of the page, you can check the HelmutFX server version, as well as the client version. Should you not have done so, you are able here to download the appropriate HelmutFX client, either for Windows or for Mac OS. A Linux client is available on request. In our video you will see all the options and users will see a more stripped-down interface. The search option, which is very similar for all modules, will allow you to search for items inside the selected module. So, for FX these would be projects. You can search and filter on all of the items seen in the dashboard, name, tag, group, category, etc. Whenever you enter an additional search parameter, this will show up in a bubble underneath the search field. You can modify these filters by clicking on them and select different parameters. Clicking on an entry in a column, apart from the name column, will also add a filter. Alternatively, you can press the plus next to the existing filters to add and configure a new filter. By clicking the small X you can delete a specific filter bubble. By default, there are 3 fixed filters: group, category, and template. These filters have been set to all by default. These filters can be modified and may also change their filter parameters, based on your selection. As an example, selecting a specific template will also set the category and group, as this template is part of this particular group and category. A filter setup can be saved. This then saves the user from setting up the same search parameters and filters multiple times. You can do so by pressing the small button next to the search field. Here you will find options to clear current filter settings, save the current filter, or choose from previously stored filters. The stored filters can be deleted by clicking on the trash can symbol in front of them. Filters are stored per user, not globally. At the right-hand side of the screen, there is an indicator showing how many projects are shown in relation to the projects available. By default, we show 25 entries, but you may select 50, 75 or 100 entries to be shown. Should there be more entries to be shown than would fit in the number of entries you defined, a page selector will be visible on the top left-hand side of the project list. Let us look at the Projects section now. In the first column, you will find the type of project. This can be an Adobe Premiere, Adobe After Effects, or an Adobe Audition project. The next column to the left indicates a specific status, if applicable. A project can be unlocked, which will leave the column blank, it can be locked, which will be shown as a padlock, and archived projects will show up with a different icon. The name column holds the project name. If the project name is grayed out, this means that the project has a specific status, for example, archived, which would prevent the user from working with it. Tags can be set when creating projects. A tag will allow the user to easily tag the project with a specific keyword. This tag can of course be used in searches and filters. You can choose from either predefined tags, or create their own, just by typing them in the tag field when creating a project. The group column will give the user information on the specific group this project was created in. The same goes for the category. In the templates column, you will find the template used when the project was created. In order to see when the project was last modified, you can have a look in the modified column. As soon as the project was opened, the modified date and time will refresh. The next two columns will show you which user lastly modified the project and who the creator of the project was. The last column is the Action button. When clicking this button, you will see some actions, which can be applied to the selected project. All functions, apart from the custom entry, are available by default. The availability of any of these functions can be set on a user or group permissions, so you are able to hide specific functions from certain users. Under Custom you will find custom-defined functions, specific actions you can create within the system and link to specific workflows. The following functions are available and will be covered at some stage in the training. Open will open a project. Restore Saves allows you to restore a saved project status. Edit will open the initial project window and lets you modify some fields, for example, metadata fields, tags. It will not allow you to change name, group, category and template, as this would have a huge impact on the functionality and logic inside the application. Duplicate will duplicate the current project. It will open the same window as Create Project would, and will allow you to create the duplicate project in different groups and categories and use different templates. You cannot change the project type. A Premiere project will be duplicated as a Premiere project, etc. Delete will delete the selected projects. Be advised, Helmut 4 does not have an undo function for deleted projects. None of the mentioned functions will do anything, if we did not connect a specific workflow to it. The functions that can be clicked are merely trigger points, that can be used to execute streams. Streams is our name for our dedicated workflows. Selecting a specific column, apart from the name column, will reveal an overlay window on the right, which contains additional information, or metadata, of the project. There can be custom metadata fields set up in the system, but we also have fixed metadata fields, such as the project path, creation date and unique ID. From this window you can run an action on multiple selected projects. Whether an action can be executed, depends on the status of the selected projects. Clicking on an entry in the name column will behave as the function Open Project, as explained earlier. On top of the last column, you will find the refresh icon. The project list will not automatically refresh, as this may be confusing to the user. If new projects have been created, or deleted, inside Helmut, the refresh button will turn red, indicating a change took place. Pressing the refresh button will update the project list. Any search and filter you are using will remain intact. Every module inside of Helmut 4 comes with a dashboard. The dashboard will give the administrator information about users in the system, in FX, or actions executed, in IO, CO, or HK. The FX dashboard will show you the users that are currently logged in, together with their display name, role, client IP/DNS name, and client version, and the time since the user logged in. HelmutFX is licensed on a concurrent user basis. You may have 40 clients installed in your facility, but only 10 of them can be logged into HelmutFX at the same time if you only have 10 user licenses. User number 11 would receive a message when logging in, that no further licenses are available. The number of licenses used is shown on the right-hand side, also showing the total license count and the percentage of licenses in use. The administrator is able to force all users to be logged out of the system, by using the button, Kick All. You can also use the Send Message to All function to distribute a notification to all the logged-in users. Using the Action button, users can also individually be notified or logged out of the system. Open Logs will open the log of the specific selected user or client for troubleshooting purposes. This only works with HTTP connections. HTTPS is not supported for this functionality. HelmutFX manages users and permissions on both user and group level. You can create users, add groups and then add users to these groups. These groups can then be given permissions. These will automatically be applied to all users in the group. In the user's interface you can see the users and groups, and which users are member of specific groups. You can select All to see all users. Unassigned will show you all the users, which are not part of any group. By selecting a specific group, HelmutFX will show you the members of that group. And you can of course search for users by using the search field. Users can be a member of multiple groups. If so, permissions will also be added to the user from the selected groups. Group permissions are prioritized over individual user permissions. Within HelmutFX, you may decide to use a display name, which may be different from your username. Users can choose which name they would like to use to log into HelmutFX. We can define which modules within HelmutFX will be available to specific users. Assuming the system has all modules licensed, users can be assigned to FX, IO, CO and HK. HelmutFX can reserve a license for a specific user, or users. This means that this particular user will always be able to log into the system, as the system will block a license, which cannot be used by any other user. It therefore lowers the amount of usable concurrent licenses. HelmutFX differentiates between two user roles, regular users and administrators. An administrator will have access to configuration items inside the different modules, whereas the user will be restricted to functions needed during day-to-day production. The button Change in the Password column will allow you to change the passwords for the user. Clicking on the small eye icon will allow you to check the entry you have just made. It will not show any password stored previously. Please note, users can also change their own passwords and we advise them to do so, whenever the password was changed by an administrator. The Action button gives you access to some other functions. Manage Groups will allow you to add users to groups, as described later. User Access will allow you to define the access rights and permissions for users. Generate Auto Login will download a token file to your local machine, which can be used to set up an automatic login to a client. This is useful for clients on render nodes. OAuth lets the user log in using token-based authorization, rather than using passwords. Rename lets you modify the display name of a user. The username cannot be modified once created. Change Email will allow you to change the user's email address. Delete will remove the selected users. You can easily add a group to the system, by pressing the button Add Group and enter a name for your new group. When done, press Add and the newly created group will show up on the page. Go ahead and add existing users to the group, by pressing the three dots button next to the group name and select Manage Users from the menu. In the window that opens, you can now select single or multiple users from the Available Users section to the Selected Users section by using the arrows. You can also decide to select all users. Removing users from a group works the same way. Select the user from the Selected Users section and press the left arrow on the screen. The user is now removed from the Selected Users section. The same procedure applies when you press Manage Groups from the Action menu, after highlighting the appropriate user. Adding a user follows a similar process. By pressing the Add User button at the top right of the screen, a new window will open, where you can define the details for the new user. You will be prompted to enter a username, a display name, the email address of the user and the initial password. You can define the role of this user or administrator, and add the user to a group, or multiple. Please note, only username and display name are mandatory. We however advise to always create a password, to prevent unauthorized access. When groups are created or users added, the access presets will be applied to these. These are the default parameters for new users and groups. By clicking the Access Presets button, you can determine the default preset setup you would like to apply to your users and groups. You can always modify the individual user and group rights by using the function User Access or Group Access, which can be found under the Action button for users, or by pressing the three dots next to the group name, for group access settings. When a user is made member of a group, it will automatically inherit its permissions and access rights. You therefore do not need to define these rights per user, you just define these once in the group and add users to the respective group. You can define new access presets inside the Manage Access Presets window by pressing the Add Preset button. Name your new preset with an appropriate name and define if this preset should apply to users or groups. Press Save and you will see your new preset in the list. This preset can be modified to your likings. When modifying the access presets, you will see the different switches, sorted per module, FX, IO, CO and HK. You can now decide which functions users, or group members, should be able to see and use, by toggling the switch to the on or off position. If you now choose Apply from the Action button, you will see all the users, and can select one or more users which the preset should be applied to. The same procedure is valid when creating a new group preset. Templates are used in conjunction with categories. When creating projects, you can get more and more granular in your setup. This is established by the group you are in, the categories within your group, and finally, the available templates per category. Let us explain this through an example. Let us assume we have a user called Mary. Mary is member of the news group and needs to work on an item for the evening news. Mary needs to create a new project from the Projects window. She will select Evening News as the category and can now choose a template for her project, for example, Evening News, or Headlines. So you can see how we let you hone into the right setup, by going through these different settings, starting with users, then to groups, then categories, and finally templates. The Templates section will let you organize categories and project templates. To create a category, you must first select a group which will hold this new category. You will now see a button called Add Category at the top right of your screen. By pressing this, a new window will open, which allows you to enter the name for your new category. When you come back to the main screen, after pressing Add, you will see the created category. By highlighting it, you will see a Templates overlay window appear on the right-hand side of the screen. You now have the ability to upload your templates. Templates are in fact real project files from either Adobe Premiere, After Effects or Audition, the 3 Adobe applications supported. After uploading the template project, it will appear to the user in that particular group. Alternatively, you can manage your categories and templates directly on your hard drive. Navigate to your Templates folder, as defined in the Preferences, and manipulate the Categories folder and project template files to your liking. HelmutFX will automatically pick up the changes and make them available to users. Let's see what the whole process looks like now for your users. We are going to create a new project, select the appropriate group for this project, the category, and then determine which template we would like to use. We will now have a look at Preferences. The most used and most relevant settings in the Preference section are done under General. Furthermore, you will find modules. These refer to specific third-party products and functionality we have integrated into the HelmutFX package. These will be covered in different training sessions and in our documentation. The General Preferences screen is divided in 3 different sections: Storage Locations, Path Mapping Settings and Variables. This section also allows you to back up and restore the complete HelmutFX setup, or parts of it. When selecting the backup option, you will be presented with a new window, showing you all switches for items you can choose to backup. You can also use the Toggle All switch, to set all options to on or off simultaneously. After pressing the Create button at the lower right of the screen, Helmut 4 will create a backup and download it to your local computer. When you want to restore a previous backup of the Helmut 4 setup, simply press Restore and choose the zip file that holds the backup you would like to restore. Helmut 4 will warn you that data and configurations may be lost by restoring a backup. After selecting Yes, the backup file will be uploaded and processed. Before using Helmut 4, it makes sense to define the parent storage locations for our projects, our templates, and the profiles. We already know what projects and templates are, now we are introducing profiles. Profiles can be used to change the behavior of the Adobe application, based on the user logging in. With the switch Enable Multi-OS we can create a universal environment, which will take into account the different operation systems and their typical path declarations. Helmut 4 is using Unix paths internally. By adding path mapping settings, we can configure the Windows equivalent of the Unix paths. This will allow to use Helmut 4 in a mixed environment, Windows OS, Mac OS, Unix. You can select the user interface language for Helmut 4, English is delivered and set by default. If you have other language packs installed, you can change your default language here. Under Variables you can create and define your own predefined fields and prefill these with values. The temporary project import directory defines the path where projects will be stored that were imported through the function Add New Project. Here you will find a button called Import, which allows you to import existing projects into Helmut 4. Because we would normally want to treat these projects a little different than projects originating from Helmut 4, we can store these temporarily in a different storage location and create a workflow to process these. The final section will allow you to clean up the job database. This is more relevant for Helmut IO. But as the preference pane is the same for all the modules, it will show up in FX as well. You can activate the cleanup routine and decide when it should trigger, and how it should behave. The time of execution determines when the cleanup will take place. The cleanup job can be triggered only once per 24 hours. The cleanup option lets you choose between two methods, either by job count or by date. Using job count will allow you the number of finished jobs to keep, the date filter allows you to delete jobs older than X days or months. In this section, you can add additional languages and create your own translations per item. Please note, the Stream Designer user interface cannot be translated and will always use English. To start the translation into a new language, press the Add Language button. In the window that opens, you can enter the language, for example, Español. Press Add and select the newly added language, which will show up with an exclamation sign next to it. This sign indicates that the translation has not been completed for the language selected. You can expand the different items on the screen, it will then show the different keys and the verbose text, as it is being used in the user interface. Now fill in the appropriate translation, you will see the exclamation mark disappear at that particular item and you may continue to the next field. As it may not be obvious to locate the different keys inside the user interface, you can switch on the Debug Language option, which will now show you the key names in the user interface. This will make it easier for you to find the right translation. If you are working on the user interface in a language you do not understand, you can always flip the Force English switch. This will force your interface to be set to English, but will have no effect on other users' language settings. Metadata is additional data, linked to a project, that can be used to store a variety of extra information to that project. Common metadata fields include date, project ID, project owner, etc. Helmut 4 already has a few metadata fields on board, these cannot be modified, nor deleted. They can however be used, when creating workflows. You may want to create additional fields, where you can store extra, customized information about the project. The most common moment users will be confronted with metadata fields, is when creating new projects. When opening the metadata page, you will see all metadata fields currently available in the system. You can also sort these fields by group. As with users, metadata fields can be part of multiple groups. The metadata settings are however global. By pressing the button Add Metadata, you can provide a name for the new field you want to create. When pressing Add, you will return to the initial metadata page. You can now set the different options for the created field. When highlighting a metadata field, an overlay will be displayed, where you can see which groups contain this field. You will need to define what kind of data will be contained in the metadata field. This could be one of the following. String, this allows for free text to be entered into the field. Integer allows you to enter only numbers. Setting to field to Boolean will display a switch, which can be switched to on or off, In workflows you will use true or false when validating a Boolean field. Date will allow the user to enter a date. There is also a small calendar widget available to easily select the date. Date time is the same as date, with an additional field to set a time. There is also a widget available to set the time more easily. Time will format the field to hold the time. Again, a widget is available to set the time. When using the type select and by adding different values in the values column, users will be able to choose the appropriate value from a drop-down list. The different values can be entered using a comma as a delimiter. Multi-select allows users to choose multiple options from the values list. You can choose to set a default value in a metadata field, if desired. There are other options to set for each metadata field. Read only will make the field visible only. You will not be able to modify any values, but you can still use the values in your workflows. Mandatory will make it mandatory for a user to add a value to a specific field. The user will not be able to, for example, create a new project, if the field does not contain any data. The pre-resolve option is useful when you want to use wildcard values from variables inside your metadata field. As an example, we will use the variable, user.name, as the default value for a metadata text field. With the pre-resolve option activated, HelmutFX will look up the value and show it in the metadata field. This is a very powerful function to use dynamic values in metadata values. If a field is set to hidden, it will not be displayed in the Add Project dialog, but can still be used to store values. A hidden field will be visible, however, in the project overlay. When you set the field to disabled, it will be disabled. It may, however, still show up in the project overlay view, if there was a value set for the selected project. Lastly, the filterable option determines if the metadata field can be searched inside the search dialog box. The action button will give you the option to delete the metadata field. This will of course also delete all the data inside this field for every individual project. Within the Stream section of Helmut, you will be able to view, set up, and modify your workflows. Inside Helmut we refer to workflows and automations as being streams. Setting up streams will be covered in another video. The license page will give you information on the license applied to the system. It will hold information on the company and contact for which the license was granted. Should you only have a temporary license, you will be able to check the expiration date, and you can of course check the amount of user licenses included. The major version field indicates the Helmut version. In our case it should read 4. The products field will reveal which modules are included in the license. The full package would contain FX, IO, HK and CO. If you received a new license, you can import that license by pressing the button Import License and paste the license key string provided by the vendor. Once imported, the system immediately applies the new license conditions. This concludes our training session for HelmutFX. Please continue with the training session HelmutFX. And please make sure you do your own exercise on the system, so you get acquainted with the user interface and the product. We will see you in the next video.